Welcome back to She Births Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Wright, and today's guest we have Denise Bard. Hi,
Hi.
Denise. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, can you tell my listeners a little bit about your childhood history and what you went through?
Sure. So, I do a keynote. So when I do my keynote speeches, I talk about the 30-second moments, and I'll kind of explain it with this too. So, my mom was 16 and my biological dad was 18 when they had me, but they were both addicted to drugs. I spent my childhood on the maternal side, and my mom's addiction had gotten really bad. So I had grown up in a very abusive environment. I've faced all forms of abuse. But I think the worst was her addiction had gotten so bad that she used me in order to get the highs that she needed. So, so I've faced a lot of different challenges growing up. I was part of the physical abuse, emotional abuse. I had the whole coot and caboodle.
Man.
Yeah. But
you okay?
but I've overcome it all.
Yeah.
The thing is I've overcome it, and most people who know me have no idea. Just wouldn't have crossed their mind that any of this happened, which is a tribute to the people that were in my life. So
yeah, it's tough growing up in a past like that, like in an abusive home like that, because when you grow up to be a mother yourself, then your kids are going to want to know about your past and be like, hey, did you have a good relationship with your family? How was your mom? Things like that. So how does that work, you being a mother yourself?
Yeah. So this was quite interesting. So it wasn't until 2014 is when I cut ties with my family. It was really hard because I was afraid still. I mean, I was in my late 30s and that fear is still there. You feel like, I'd been told my whole life that people would not believe me, they would leave me. And there was this thing where it was more important to me at the time that I had this extended family instead of me standing up for myself and then my kids, which that's something I've had to kind of come over because, I should have put my kids first, but I was still in that fear game. So my kids kind of knew my mom when they were younger, but then they forgot about her, which worked out in my benefit. They were 7 and I think 11 when this happened, and my husband's military, so we had moved out of state, so it kind of worked out where it wasn't presented there, and I never talked about it. So I never talked negatively about my family members. I never talked anything. The only thing I used to tell my daughter was I didn't have a happy childhood. That was it. She didn't get to know anything else. But as she got older, she got more and more inquisitive. And so I was like, okay, when you turn 18, you can ask me. So we actually were driving to New York for her 18th birthday 2 years ago. And she said, well, I'm 18 now. I'm going to start asking.
Oh, wow.
And so I did answer her. I didn't tell her everything because I wasn't comfortable, with sharing that with my child. Now she's almost 20. So I'm sure. Yeah. So, it was one of those choices that I think it was the best thing. Like, this isn't my kids' baggage. I don't want them to know that because it doesn't matter about my childhood. It's about how they are raised. You know what I mean? And what's interesting about this is, so my keynote is about 30-second moments. And so what I say is that it takes 30 seconds for someone to feel something so deep that it transcends the time that it actually took someone to say something to you. And the thing that helped me out growing up, and how I'm only telling you this because it goes with my daughter and being a mom now. So growing up, I know that my support that helped me to be the mom I am today is the counselor I had at a shelter I stayed with, my case manager, she like gave me the one word of like, pretty much shift your focus. And when I did that, it was, I had teacher, coach. And what's interesting about that is, as I was telling my daughter all, how I grew up and, well, a little bit, but I was explaining to her about these moments that I had with, a teacher. And like one teacher introduced me to someone as her Denise. And that was so powerful to me. It didn't mean anything to her. It took less than 30 seconds. But man, did I feel wanted after I'd been told I wasn't. And so, I had a coach who, pretty much saved my life when she took me in this headlock after I decided I was going to end my life. In my second attempt. And she's like, I'm going to take you under my wings. And that was the moment that I felt like, man, I matter. And then my counselor from the group home or shelter I was in, who, she used to give me these hugs. Like I had never had a bear hug. So like, oh man, like she is, anybody who knows her, she hugs like nobody else. And it just melts. But that was like my unconditional love. And then I had a high school teacher who would always say after school, come and talk to me, because, she could tell actually I was having bad days. And she was my gym teacher, and she's like, come in this was way back when you could do these things, but she was like, come sit in my car with me and talk to me. And it was like, she was like my mom. She wanted to know what my day was like. So I'm telling my daughter, she's 18, a little bit about, my history, and those things came up. And she like turned to me, and I almost crashed the car because I was driving. And she said, she was like, Mom, I am so glad that they raised you that way, because I love the way that you raised me. I mean, if that's not a testament, I mean, just those little things. And so it was really like powerful for me, because I felt gypped not having a mom. Like I just wanted to be adopted from a young age. I just wanted a mom from the youngest age. And I felt like, well, without one, how can I be a good mom? I'm lucky I have this incredible husband, so we have a great relationship, and that helps. But it was when you don't have that environment to learn from, what do you do? And so I, when she said that, I'm like, holy crap, I'm so grateful now even more for those moments, because it's like my kid is saying, hey, I love the way that you, and I'm like, prior to that, I thought, man, I'm failing as a mom. How am I going to do this? I'm going to fail. So yeah, it's definitely challenging at times, because you don't know what to do. And I know that everybody said, oh, there's no manual. No, there's not, but there's really good role models, and you grow up being able to see things, and that is your quote unquote, book about how to do things. But yeah,
I agree with you. Like my mom never abused me or anything, but my mom, we weren't close. So we didn't have that mother-daughter bond. Like we didn't do mother-daughter outings and stuff like that. So I feel what you're feeling. Like that mother, my mom never hugged me. She never hugged me. She hugs my brother, but she doesn't hug me. And I'm like, why don't I get a hug?
No kidding, right? Yeah.
But I feel like you turned out to be a great mother. That is something to go through. And then now you're like this wonderful mother. You only have one daughter?
No, I have a son. He has autism. So I've been challenged, but you know what? It's a good challenge. I love it. He's high functioning. He's just developmentally a little younger. But again, like I think it really is, it was important that I got those moments with the teachers and, all those people, because once again, there's no manual for that. But I definitely, so I have him too. He says that he loves me dearly, so I must be doing something right.
So at what age was you put into the, I guess, group home, foster care, or was it group home?
No. Okay. So, well, when I was 4, I went into kinship care, and I don't know how familiar you are with kinship care. It's family court takes you out of your like they took me from my mother and put me with my grandmother as like it's kind of like foster care within a family. So they still have to like do the same things where you have to be, have your doctor's appointment, make sure you're, everything I guess like a foster family has to go to, where they have to, well, back in the late 70s, early 80s, they weren't so strict, but so I was in there from when I was 4 on and off until I was 12. But I went to it's called Anchor House. It's a shelter for runaway, abused, and homeless youth. And that's in Trenton, New Jersey, where I'm from. And I went there when I was 14. And it was because I did attempt to take my life. And I stopped, and not because I didn't want to take my life. It was because I knew if I did, my mom would claim to be a victim and cry about it. And that just angered me so badly. So I told a good friend who I knew was going to tell school. And when, of course, my mom came in, she played the victim. Oh, that was really hard to deal with, being in that room. But then the police came, and I told them they can take me anywhere, but I wasn't going home. So they took me to the shelter, and I was 14. I stayed there for about a month. And so it was the best thing that has ever happened to me. It was. So I always say for 30 days, I walked up there, and it was like, I don't know, the door opened, and it was like all this relief. Like I just felt so safe, I had gone from being something in someone else's life because I really didn't feel like a person. And then, I go in there, and now I'm someone in my life. And so, it was, I got so much out of there, it's where my foundation comes from, I think.
It was a blessing that they did not send you back to the home, because in most cases they send them back to the home.
Yeah, they did. After 30 days, I was sent back.
No.
And so here's the thing with that. I grew up being told and believing that everything that was happening to me, that abuse, like I was to blame for it. And it was kind of normal. So when you're from a young child, all the way up being told, well, you did this to yourself. And, even like going as far as saying this is normal, everybody's family does it, you don't think to say anything. So for me, I actually never said anything about the abuse because I was terrified I would get in trouble. So even when I went to the group home, to us it was a group home, but it's a shelter. Even then, I didn't share. I just said it was an awful house. I didn't even say the things that were happening to me. Because I was so scared. Like I didn't want to lose these people that I, had this relationship. They were like, people that I was getting love from and acceptance. And I was afraid if I said what abuses were happening, I would get in trouble for it. So because of that, I had to go back with my family about after a month. And so, it was, that's what I say too. I'm like, ugh. But
was it worse when you went back?
So my abuse has kind of changed over the years. When the last time I was sexually abused was when I was 12. And that was the last time. And then it went to, and then I had to move back in with my mom full time. And that's when everything went bad. And that kind of started the real, there was physical and then like really, I don't know, psychological, emotional, like being told all the time that I was hated. Just those things on a daily basis. And The hitting, yeah, that was still there. That went on till I was probably 17. But this is I say funny. It's not funny, but you know, as kids, when we go through these traumas, we find different ways to cope. So when I went back to her and these things were happening, to be honest, it's not funny, but it's funny to me because this is how I dealt with it. But I would learn if she would hit me, if I laughed, she would stop. So like when she hit me, I would laugh. The harder she hit, the harder I laughed, the quicker she stopped and just told me I was crazy. And I just went along with that. So the abuses over the years just kind of changed. The emotional and psychological, I think you can't take that out. I mean, that's like from young on, you know what I mean? But it got more difficult in the sense that every time I wanted to like maybe tell somebody or I come a little bit close saying something to someone, they would disappear. And it was because, you know, probably my family was scaring them. And that was instilled in me too, that, well, people leave you because you're too much for them. So once again, I start stuffing down what's really happening. And then I think at that point, I was probably, after I got out of Anchor House, it was 6 months later that I actually contemplated taking my life again. And that's when my coach kind of stepped in and she took me in this headlock telling me she's taking me under her wings. And I was reminded that I do matter. And it was almost as if, well, all right, I got to do what I got to do. Like, I'm going to survive this. How am I going to survive? Because I knew nothing was going to change at home. You know, the fairy godmother doesn't come down and tap you on the head and make everything great again. But it's all about survival. And we all have different ways that we, you know, can survive, different coping, different everything. So for me, it was latching on to teachers.
At least they were there for you. A lot of them were there for you.
Yeah. But here's like the kicker. They had no idea. Like these little things that they did had no idea that it was, you know, that it was making the difference. I mean, it was simple sentences, you know, just one sentence can change everything. So I think we kind of make them there, if that makes sense. For me, I made the role of that's, you know, they're going to be what I need them to be in order to get through. So
now you as an adult and with your husband, does he know about your past history?
You know, yes. So that's been a really hard one and a difficult one, to be honest, because I had this, you know, I think a lot of us, when we've had that kind of a trauma, we almost want to shelter it because we don't want people to look at us in a different way, feel sorry for us, especially if you're in a relationship, you know what I mean? You don't want that thought process. And, you know, if you were sexually abused like me, you know, there's that scare or fear that, you know, in the back of their mind, they're going to think something. And so I kind of kept that. I kept all the abuse hush for a long time. It wasn't probably until 2014 where it was like, all right, you know, he knew things weren't right. I mean, my family's a little off. But no, like even just like, guess maybe within the past year really has been talking a little bit more as I've become open because, you know, again, I've been taught my whole life, you know, these things were my fault. And no matter how many times somebody says it wasn't, you know, you still feel inside like there's something wrong with you. I know there's not, but it's really difficult. So yeah, I think, as I've been doing more speaking and doing the podcast and different things, 5 years ago, I was in a book. So it's a tabletop book. Yeah. So a director did a docufilm and it's called Removed. And I know I'm going to send you the links. But it was a whole thing about a little girl being taken from an abusive home and put into foster care, and that whole two segments of it. And it was obviously actors, but it was partially on they were foster parents, so they were kind of giving that background. Anyway, they did this book, and it's called Listen, and it's a tabletop book with people from around the world, from the youngest age to like in their 70s, with just stories about their lives, whether they've been in foster care or they were in a kinship care, anything like that. Anyway, my story is like right smack in the middle, 2 pages, less than 3 minutes. And that was the first time he had read it. So that was, I think, 2018, something like that. Yeah.
2018.
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we've been married for 22 years.
Oh, man. You did it for
yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't.
Wait,
if he asked me something, I was going to tell him. So I never lied. It's just, it was really difficult for me to share certain things. And I've become I was not ever insecure. It's just, it's one of those where I think each of us individually who have faced the traumas have to kind of figure out where we are comfortable and how we take the process to be able to open up,
Exactly. So my final question, then I'll let you go, I promise. So do you speak to your mother ever? Or
no.
Done?
No. Actually, back in 2000, well, 2017, she, it was 2017, she called social services on me. And so I haven't talked to her in years, nor do I wish to. But she called social services on me, claiming that I make my kids sick. My kids have, they have genetic disorders, and I have some too. And apparently, like, these are hindsight. The doctors all think it was because I'm a product of, the drug abuse. And so here I am, and I must have carried it on. Anyhow, they have geneticists and things, and she called social services on me, and it was quickly closed, because we have doctors all over that were like, she can't do any of these things to her children. And so and then it was, I think 2 years ago, I had to go to a judge and get a no contact order, so I can never say her name, which I am okay with. And never ask anybody to go, to her. It's, and I'm okay. I'm great. This is great. That doesn't exist to me. This is our life. Exists to me and to us. And, we have our little world of 4 of us,
Yeah, that's great that you really found like a really great man. Like those are really hard to come by.
Let me tell you. Yeah, no, I am, but I am so fortunate. I always tell him, I was like, I know I'm so crazy. He's like, we're not polar opposites, but we are. He's like quiet, keeps things, and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna talk about it. But man, I'm very happy.
I find that, because these men, some of them don't understand trauma, so it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it is. And he's been very supportive. He kind of knows when I'm at my limit. Doesn't push anything. And knows when I need to, like, I'm not ready to talk about something. Do you know what I mean? And never takes that personally, because that's a big thing. I think if somebody can learn how to not take it personally from someone who's had trauma.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank you so much, Denise, for coming on my podcast today and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. It was great talking with you.
You have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to Sheepler's podcast. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on all platforms. If you would like to know about Denise, I have added her information on the description. And thank you all so much for listening. Bye.